Welcome to the show, IB Nation Sports Talk. We are up. We are rolling with Vince D'Addario. I'm Sean Stiers. How you doing today? Vince, how are you?
I'm great. It was a good Monday. Feeling good. I don't know. It feels like the beginning of a good week. We'll see what happens.
First day of spring. We'll see. I don't know.
That's
I guess it
true.
was a little bit warmer today than it has been the last couple of days, even though the morning it was still cold.
It was sunny. It was cold
Yeah.
this morning, but it was at least sunny.
Yeah. I'll just say right off the top,
Oh,
no, I'm not flipping you off. I'm playing injured today.
what happened?
I was cutting sweet potatoes for lunch and I cut a hunk of skin off my finger. And it was like, I don't know if you've ever seen this trick. I learned this watching a TV show called Poker Face that's on the Peacock app. You can use super glue to stop bleeding. You know, like if you get a cut, put some super glue on it, glue it shut, stops bleeding. Well, this hunk was big enough that it wasn't, I didn't just like slice the skin, you know, I really took a hunk out of my finger and it wouldn't stop bleeding. And so
That sounds
like
horrible.
I've got like a towel, one of those, like a hotel size, you know, white towel, may have come from a hotel someplace. But I was like applying pressure and holding it up, and I kept like thinking of, well, gosh, I've been holding it long enough. It's got to have stopped by now. Nope. So my wife came home and bandaged it up, and so that's it makes typing really fun. I'll tell you that.
Oh, I can imagine because you probably hit like 3 keys at a time if you're going to use
That's
that
right.
finger. I mean,
So I'm like hunt peck with this hand and like trying to type regular with the other. And it's very odd.
well, it's nice to have an RN at home. I'm sure that
Yes.
was fairly useful at this point. And I actually learned from your wife that fingers bleed way more than any other part of your body.
Really? When did she say that?
When my son was about 6 months old, he cut himself
Ooh.
on my razor, like for my face. And he
Okay.
cut like the pad of his finger, and it just would not stop bleeding. And of course, my first child. So we're talking like, 16 years ago. I'm freaking out. My wife is freaking out. Who do I call? I called your wife. And she's
Wow.
like, relax.
Well, this has only been about 16 years ago. It's why it's not ringing a bell.
Right.
So.
Right. She's like, fingers bleed real bad. It's okay. I'm like, all right, okay. Like, I was the whole like new dad freaking out
Right.
thing.
Right.
And yeah, so your wife actually gave me that little piece of information.
Tucked you down off the ledge.
She
Okay.
did.
Yeah.
She did.
Yes, that's right. T-Guns, a little extra flavor for the potatoes. If I had been on the TV show Chopped on Food Network, they would have not taken my food entry because there would have been a hunk of skin in the middle. Oh man.
Gosh.
It's just I've tried to take the bandage off a couple of times and it just was gushing blood after I took it off. So I've like had this on for about 4 or 5 hours now. So
I bet.
First time I've lopped off a hunk of skin on my hand in a long time. So
really?
Yes. I don't know if you saw the report. There's a tweet from a guy named David Jones. He's from Penn Live, out of Pennsylvania. And I think Tom Noy retweeted it. Okay. Micah Shrewsbury, the Penn State head coach, is apparently in talks with Notre Dame about the position. Really? And I don't know how imminent, but talks are going on, I guess. Huh. So that's very interesting.
That is extremely interesting because I didn't think that one was going to happen because of the success that Penn State has had kind of down the stretch here. I thought that was a pipe dream, if I'm being honest. I did not see this one coming. I really didn't.
Yeah. I thought it was much more like DeVries at Drake or Langle out at Colgate. And, the thing about DeVries, and I assume he has interviewed since he's been talked about. I don't know. Maybe he has, maybe he hasn't, or maybe at least representation been talked to. The thing about him that I didn't know until watching Drake's game the other day, who are they playing? Miami, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
His son, Tucker, is really good. He might have been like the Missouri Valley Player of the Year, I think. But he was very good in, or at least all conference. So like if he's a
Okay.
junior thing. So like if he had come, then you had the potential of, because Notre Dame needs to fill out a roster, it's like, hey, bring the kid with you.
He could,
But
yeah, he could pull a Dion, be like, "There's your starting point guard right there." I don't know what position he plays, but
right.
he did that for his kid. There's your starting quarterback right there. At his opening press conference, like,
Yes.
"Hey, bring it on. We need as many people as possible."
That's right. That's exactly right. Speaking of March Madness, before we get to this announcement that we're going to talk about here in a minute, I saw, Brent Musburger, obviously longtime TV guy. He used to, before Jim Nance, there was Brent Musburger. He was doing games for CBS, the Final Four, and all that stuff in the 1980s.
Yep.
And he was on Rich Eisen's show last week, his radio show, and I had never heard that. Do you know the origin of like where the term March Madness came from?
Sure don't.
Brent
Never,
Musburger.
I don't know.
Brent Musburger was kind of long and drawn out, but so I'll try to abbreviate it
Shocker.
a little bit. It came from the state of Illinois. Like,
really?
Yeah. There was a car dealer who did ads on TV in Illinois, and he coined the term March Madness, and Brent Musburger heard him, and it came like, I think the ads were on, like during the Illinois State basketball tournament. And so Brent Musburger had heard this at some point, and he used the phrase on CBS. And so then, of course, the NCAA heard it, and they were like, that's perfect. We've got to use that. March Madness, da-da-da. Well, so they tried to trademark it. And, of course, the state of Illinois had started using it, which, from this TV commercial, car dealer, whatever. And so the Illinois Athletic Association, or whatever it's called, said, not so fast, my friend. We've got, the actual trademark on this. And so apparently there was some sort of settlement. The NCAA paid them for the use of the term, and the NCAA has since trademarked it. But that's where it came from.
Huh. Interesting.
Never knew
I had
that.
No idea. No, me neither.
Had never heard that before.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, because now nobody can use it. We can't use it when we talk about things, and can't even use it. Got to call it hysteria or the big bracket, or got to make something up. We're not allowed to use it because they'll come hunting us down.
That's right. So Notre Dame women won yesterday. We'll talk about that in rapid fire. We've got a lot of stuff coming up in rapid fire. Some Mike Bray stuff in rapid fire. Speaking of the Notre Dame job, all kinds of stuff. Crazy. I hope you're excited about at least a couple of the rapid fire questions, because
I didn't really respond to you about your rapid fire questions.
No,
today.
Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. But
that's true.
But I came up with a couple questions based on a tweet you had.
I know. Yes, I forgot about that. Yeah, I did. Because I'm not, anybody that follows me on Twitter, I'm not a huge tweeter,
right?
But every once in a while, the
firing off.
The groove gets to me, and I had just seen. Anyway, we'll get into it. But I was kind of passionate about that tweet. Really.
Yeah, you were very into it. And I don't know if that was the best scene, but it was still a really good scene.
It's one of my favorites. It is one of my favorites, though. Because
no, it is like when he goes through the whole spiel, on Maximus the Son, and all that stuff. I've always been pretty partial to the opening scene. On my command, unleash hell.
Oh,
that's a pretty good one too.
It is,
but not my favorite. But you're right. Like, I'd have to sit back and that movie's been on. It's been making the rounds for the last few weeks on the cable channels, I've noticed.
Okay.
So stayed up and watched it, I think, one night a couple of weeks ago. So we do have an announcement to make. Salty says a fun announcement. Well, it was about time for Jesse to marry and settle down. I trust it's not a shotgun wedding. No, it's not that. Still don't know when he's going to make an honest woman out of
seriously
his girlfriend. But
come on, dude. Let's go, man.
It's not that. His mom wonders more than I do, but
I'm sure that's true. TikTok on the grandkids. Come on.
Yes. Wow. Tommy Guns. I'm just glad you respond to my tags, Vince, unlike Mr. Stiers. I give you a like. It's like, like, I don't know what kind of response people expect. Like, is a like not enough of a response? Because if I like it, I've at least chuckled at it probably.
If there's an audible response to a tweet, I'll throw a like on there. That's how I
Right.
kind of operate as well.
Right. So are you ready for the announcement?
I think this is a pretty cool announcement, actually. I
Okay.
was a
I'm
little
glad.
shocked, actually, when I saw this for the first time. So
I'm glad. I'm glad you liked it because again, you didn't respond to anything that it's like
I know,
speaking of
right?
responses, like so I had to text you and I said, "So what do you think of this? Is this cool? Is it, like how cool do you think this is on it whatever?"
Yeah.
I think it's pretty cool. So tomorrow, well, I guess I've already said here's the announcement. On tomorrow's show, we're going to have a special guest with us right off the top at 6:00. Former Notre Dame cornerback Tariq Bracy is going to be on with us at 6:00 tomorrow. He's, of course, preparing for the draft. I believe he's going to be at Pro Day later this week. The way this came about, I was contacted by his agent on Twitter, and we set it all up. And he's going to be on. And I've tried to get confirmation that he's going to be at Pro Day, but they have not given me that confirmation. Fortunately, they have confirmed he will be on the show tomorrow.
You can ask him.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it'll honestly have to be the first thing that we bring up since we haven't gotten the off-air confirmation. So Tariq is going to join us tomorrow, talk about his career, obviously getting ready for the draft and, trying to make the NFL and all that kind of good stuff. And he's going to take some questions from viewers as well. So if you tune in tomorrow for the live show at 6:00, we'll take some questions from the chat. Keep it clean, of course.
Of course.
And Tariq Bracy will field some of your questions in the chat tomorrow. So I think it's going to be pretty fun. First time we've done something like this.
I'm going to be paying attention because I don't have anything going on tomorrow. So I'll be watching the show. And because I love Tariq, he is arguably the best nickel in Notre Dame history, in my opinion. And when I knew that he was going to be out for the USC game, that's where it all kind of turned for me, if I'm being honest, because not having him was a huge detriment to what they wanted to do defensively. So right. I am very excited to hear what he has to say and about his career and kind of the arc that it took and all of that stuff. I mean, that's going to be a fun interview.
Yeah. Anthony says, so I'm not getting the guest analyst spot. Disappointed. Sorry, Anthony.
That's over our head. We don't get to make those kinds of decisions.
That's right. So that's what we've got going on. Tariq Bracy's going to join us. Looking forward to having him on right off the top on tomorrow's show. And again, excuse me, if you're here, he'll be able to field some questions as well. So looking forward to that. Hey, smash that like button if you would as we get started on this Monday. I forgot what day it is. I'll have a little bit of an abbreviated schedule. It's looking like no show probably Thursday this week. Hopefully a rapid fire show on Friday, though, and the rest of the week should be good. Spring practice starts Wednesday, and we're going to get a Marcus Freeman press conference Wednesday morning as well after that first practice. So we'll have some Marcus Freeman comments on Wednesday's show.
It should be kind of it's usually like a state of the program kind of a situation, kind of where things stand going into spring. That's always good to kind of catch up. And, I expect you to ask a question about his attendance at all the women's games and if he's going to be there in South Carolina. I mean, those are questions that I think those are burning. Those are burning questions for me.
I don't know if he'll be able to be in South Carolina because I think they're practicing Saturday.
They have practice early, though. It's in the morning.
That's true.
I mean, he's a jet setter.
He does have that jet at his disposal.
I don't know what time the game is on Saturday.
He and Jack Swarbrick can probably both get on that jet. I have not seen the time yet either. I think they're waiting until after tonight's game, or
that would make sense.
Yeah, tonight's games are over.
See what the
before they
matchups
announce
are.
Everything. Yeah, we do know they're playing Saturday. We just don't know.
Yes,
unless it's been posted and I haven't looked. We don't know the time yet. So.
Yes, I did see it was Saturday, but I also did not see a time. But my guess is he should have an opportunity because they're not going to play it before noon, and practice is like 10 something. I want to say
very true
off the top of my head. So I would not be surprised if Marcus Freeman made a guest appearance in South Carolina for the game because practice is at 10:30 and practice is about 2 hours. He could be on a plane by 1:00 if he wanted to be.
He was there for both games this
Yeah.
weekend, Friday and yesterday. Wearing a Yankees cap yesterday. It's pretty
Yeah,
disappointing,
that's the
but
second time that I think I've
hate it
seen
when he
that.
does that. I
It's
know.
like, come on, man. I mean, he's
Yeah.
got some serious Notre Dame swag.
Yeah,
Like,
and
I
he had a
really like
cool I think he had, like, the green with the
the green hat
shamrock
with the
on
blue
Friday.
shamrock. Like
Yeah, it's
that.
one of the best hats you can wear. Come on.
Yes. What are you doing? We need to get him one of these. That's what we need to do. We need to
There
get
you
him.
go.
We need to get him an IB hat. Have him wear one of those. But no, he's got to lose the Yankee hat if he's going out in public at a Notre Dame game. That's unnecessary. It's unnecessary.
That's right.
T Guns is having a great time with our
He is,
record.
man. He is going off on the Maximus stuff right now. We'll save that for rapid fire because it's going to come up. Trust me.
Yes.
We're gonna get into the Maximus and Gladiator in rapid fire today. So I'm looking forward to that. You ever seen a Gladiator, Tommy?
Love it.
All right, Marcus Freeman, second spring at Notre Dame. Where's Marcus Freeman right now compared to a year ago, Vince?
I was thinking about this today, and obviously the vibe is different going into this spring, right? There were countless question marks going into last year's spring, right? I mean, you had a very new staff. You had Marcus Freeman as the head coach. What is that going to look like? What a practice is going to look like? What is his demeanor going to be? Do you remember the whole where is he going to stand when he's at practice? You remember that whole thing?
Right.
Like there was a lot of questions about where things were going to go. I think we've had a lot of those questions answered, but some of those questions are still around going into year number 2. You have 3 new offensive coaches. You have a 4th offensive coach in a different position, right? You got a different coordinator. You've got a brand new starting quarterback in theory, or at least a brand new quarterback that's on the roster that you didn't have last year, who brings a ton of experience, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what does that look like? How is Marcus Freeman going to handle a legitimate quarterback competition? Which I think it is. I think it is a legitimate competition.
You didn't think
How's
it
he
was
gonna handle that?
legitimate last year? Like,
No.
especially in the spring, you didn't think it was legitimate?
No, I think I was over pretty quickly. Regardless of what anybody says from other outlets and what they saw at spring practice and what we saw at fall practice, no, I do not think it was a legitimate competition. I'm sorry.
I mean, by the time fall rolled around, it wasn't. I felt like, I mean, we didn't get to see a lot, so it's hard to say, but I
This is
felt
true.
I felt like it was at least legitimate in the spring where like they were again, I would have liked to have seen more because going back to like Brandon Wimbush, Ian Book days when they were doing that quarterback competition inside the Loftus, I remember that where like you would see them, like Brandon Wimbush would run 5 plays and then Ian Book would come on the field and run the exact same 5 plays. So you could compare them exactly.
Apples to apples.
Yeah. And like, did they do that with Buckner and Pine last year? I don't know.
Well, we didn't see it. I mean,
yeah.
they may have done it, but we didn't see it. It was like a.
That's what I'm saying. We don't know exactly what that looked like.
The way they were doing it was, okay, you're the number 1 QB today, and then the next day you're the number 1 QB. It's like, you're the number 1, and then you're the number 1. Like it was weird, kind of the way they did it because it's not an apples to apples, comparison, right? And so that was a little bit odd, if I'm being honest. I don't know what I like better, to see, give them the whole practice, see how they respond, kind of a thing. Okay, I get that. But then you've got the 5-5 thing. I get that as well because you can actually compare. Okay, how did he do? How did he do? So I don't know. I guess I felt like the competition was over pretty quickly last year. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how he handles it, especially with a guy who he doesn't know that well. I mean, he's never worked with Sam Hartman outside of the couple of months that he's been on campus, in the weight room and that kind of a thing. So what does that relationship look like? There's still a lot of questions to I think the program is in a better place than it was a year ago as a whole.
Oh, I agree with that as well because it not that it was rushed, but when you're a first time head coach and you did have an offensive coordinator who had been around, but you were bringing in a new defensive coordinator, so there were at least some changes. But you're still trying to put your stamp on things as a first time
Yeah.
head coach, and you're still like he might have had a little bit of a like the skeleton, like the bones of how the operation was going to work. He tweaked things a little bit in terms of how he was running practice. Not a lot, but just enough anyway. But
Yeah.
now a year later, you've got everything. Like you know exactly how you want to run things. You've got
Right.
what you did last year, and you can say, okay, keep that, do away with that, all those different things, and the team is familiar with you as well. With the
Yeah.
exception of the young guys who are just the early enrollees and stuff like that, and a guy like Sam Hartman or Caleb Smith, John Batiste, and the transfers. Everyone else is familiar with you, knows how
Right.
your program is run, knows what you're going to do. So I think that from top to bottom, it's in a better place, but there are just enough questions because of the fact that now you've got Jared Parker as your offensive coordinator, and
Right.
you've got Marty Biaggi as your special teams coordinator, and you got Joe Rudolph as your
Mm-hmm.
new offensive line coach. So it's like last year the biggest change was on the defensive side of the ball because you went from Freeman to Golden, and now your biggest change is going to be on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to be, to a degree, I am interested to see. And I know this, I was just making fun of the fact that people were wondering where he's going to stand and all that crap. But I am curious to see kind of where he is during practice. Is he focused more on the defense? Is he focused more on the offense with all the newness, going on? Because last year at this time, I mean, he was focused more on the defense because it was Tommy's show over on
Yeah,
offense,
true.
and he was very open about that. He's like, I'm trying to learn the offense. I sit on the quarterback meetings, all of those kinds of things. But he was clearly leaning towards the defensive side because he knew Tommy had the offense under control. Now that's a different situation, right? So what is Marcus Freeman going to be doing? What is his focus going to be on? Is it going to be more as the overseer? Is it going to be more offense? Is it going to be more defense? That is a legitimate question, I think, right now.
Yeah. And I'll be curious to see if he does kind of hang around the offense a little bit more, just because
Sure.
that is the side where there are the most changes
Right.
this year. And he's got his guy, Jared Parker, as the coordinator. Does he hang around there a little
Right.
bit more, or does he try to play it 50-50, or does he even lean more, back toward the defense like we've talked about? Does he maybe hang out and work with the linebackers a little bit more?
Right.
Who
New
knows?
linebacker coach, new graduate assistant who's working with the linebackers, but came over from Alabama. So that could be a good thing. Maybe it allows, Al Golden to be more of a defensive coordinator type of a situation. How much did you trust James Laurinaitis? I realize he was a good player. I'm not saying anything about that. It was his first year as a coach. There was a learning curve there. There had to have been. No matter what, it was his first year as a coach. So, what was that like? How often was he left alone with the linebackers to coach those guys up? What did that look like as a graduate assistant? So, yeah, it's going to be really interesting, Sean. I'm upset to a degree that I can't be there on Wednesday, but I'm definitely looking forward to Saturday.
I don't know what you thought you were going to see on Wednesday. It's like FSA
Well,
in first 5
I
periods,
know. Well, it's the same thing we're going
So
to
it's
see this
it's
coming
literally
Saturday too.
it's literally everything that you just talked about. Where's Marcus Freeman standing?
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I know. And we're not going to be able to
I
know
mean,
a depth chart or any of that.
I guess we'll get to see potentially Sam Hartman throw a few balls around and Tyler Buckner
Right.
and compare arm strength.
Well, Wednesday they're not going to be wearing pads. I mean, it's just going to be helmets,
right,
and
but
shorts.
they'll throw.
Yeah. Right.
How much they throw while we're there, I don't know.
Right.
But I would think that they'll be doing some route tree stuff and stuff like that early on.
Right.
They might not, but I would think so.
I would hope so. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do without pads on, and most of it's throwing the ball. So hopefully you're going to see a lot of that. But again, FSA in 5 periods, it's going to be drill work. It's going to be throwing to managers. You know what I mean? It's going to be footwork and throwing to managers in the flats.
Right. By the way, this guy, Romlak Carrot. It took me most of last week to figure this riddle out. Do you know who this guy is?
It's Derek.
It is.
Yeah.
Did you know right away?
No, somebody said it in the chat last
Okay.
week.
Okay.
No,
Because
this riddle.
yeah. Well, when I first saw it, or when he first made whatever his
I know.
comments
I was
were,
like, I don't know
I
this
was like,
guy.
oh, this guy's who is this guy? But it's like he's kind of got the same, little wit as Derek. And then he gave himself away last week, Romlak, when Jesse and I were on, and I can't remember what exactly was said, but Romlek said something about Naomi. And as soon as he said Naomi, Jesse's girlfriend's name, I knew it had to be Derek. And then I started looking, and Romlak, that is Derek Calmer spelled backwards. So the genius that I am that took a whole week to figure it out. But
you can run, but you can't hide, Derek.
That's right. That's right. All right. Something on my computer just froze up.
No, that's not good. Well, you're not frozen, so that's a bonus.
Yeah, still. At least for now.
Just saying. Just saying.
So, we were talking about the quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Sam Hartman, Tyler Buckner. Do you think it would be better for Notre Dame if Hartman is the clear-cut number one coming out of the spring, or if Buckner is right there, maybe running right behind him at the very worst?
Honestly, I think there's two answers to this question. What's good short term? What's good long term? Right. And I tend to err on the side of long term. And so I think long term, it's best that it's going to be neck and neck, through the fall. Because I think, number one, pushing Sam Hartman is not a bad thing. Make him better. And if he's pushing Sam Hartman, that means that he's also getting better. I think that I think that's good for both, that they push each other and make each other better. And then that's only going to make Tyler Buckner a better quarterback, going into the 24 season and beyond. So I want it to be neck and neck. I want Tyler Buckner to push to get that job. I want him to do everything in his power to try to unseat, what we all think is going to be, Sam Hartman as the starting quarterback, because it's only going to benefit the two of them in the long run. So I play the long game. The short game would be, of course, Sam Hartman takes the job, has more time to throw to the number one receivers, get those relationships down, that whole thing.
Right.
Nah,
yeah, and that's kind of why I asked the question, because you can look at it like that. If Hartman is clearly the one, you would still expect a pretty even distribution of reps, I would think, in the spring compared to the fall, right? Like, even if he isn't clear cut, and like how many reps Angeli gets and how many reps Minchie gets and that kind of thing. But you're absolutely, and that's how I was looking at it. That last part that you said about essentially Hartman and his command of the offense, and the way he gets familiar with the receivers and the timing with the receivers and all those different things, and getting to figure out what's the strength of like Lorenzo Styles versus what's the strength of Caleb Smith, and all these different guys, Tobias Merriweather, with these guys, with him working together with them for the first time.
Well, and I think you can accomplish that in the summertime. And I think they've already started to accomplish that with, player-led 7-on-7s and things of that nature. But you can also accomplish that with mental reps. Sam Hartman can go through mental reps as Tyler Buckner is actually going through the physical reps and seeing, okay, how does this guy come out of this break? How does this guy run this route? How does, where does this guy like the ball to be placed? That sort of a thing. You can do mental reps while standing on the sideline watching Tyler work with the number ones and still kind of gain that knowledge about your receivers. And I think that that's still very beneficial. I do. And so while I would like my first team quarterback, whoever that's going to be, to take the vast majority of the reps, I still think those two pushing each other is best in the long run for the overall health of the Notre Dame football program.
I concur. I mean, you really need Tyler Buchner pushing Sam Hartman.
Yes.
Because if you've got a third-year guy with still very minimal actual experience who is pushing a sixth-year guy with over 100 career touchdown passes, that's only good for you in both in the short and long term. Because then, like you said, it also, like, Sam Hartman's going to be able to see that, and he's going to know that he's got to work just as hard. Like, he's not just going to show up and go through the motions, which I wouldn't expect from him. But you know,
well, I'm still a huge proponent of there being some way to get Tyler Buchner on the field. You know, however they decide to do that,
and they can figure some of that out. They can figure some of that out in the spring as well.
Yeah,
especially with Jared Parker, since Jared Parker has only been around for a little bit more than a year now at this point.
Sure,
and calling the shots on offense, he can potentially tinker with some things out there. And he and Gino Guidugli, and I didn't even mention Guidugli when we were talking about the changes on the offensive side of the ball, but that's obviously a big one as well. Like how that impacts the quarterbacks and their development going forward. I think that's going to be really interesting to watch.
I think Jeff has a really good question here that goes along with what we're talking about. He says, if it's not neck and neck in the spring with Hartman the clear option, your thoughts on Tyler Buchner sticking around for another year or possibly transferring?
Well, I mean, there's always that opportunity out there that, you know, if he feels like he's not close enough, because that transfer portal is going to open in May. But just based on the things we've heard, it doesn't sound like he's going to jump and run on this thing. Like it doesn't seem like it. But and when you look at his future, he's still going to have 2 more years after this.
After that, he's got 3 years, but another 2 after this year. So
after this year,
right.
So I mean, it's always a possibility, and that transfer portal is a big X factor these days. But I don't. My gut feeling is I don't feel like he would leave. What do you think?
That's my gut feeling as well. I think he can see the long game again. You know, the bigger picture on what this could do for his career, being the starting quarterback at Notre Dame for at the very least 1 year, if not 2, you know, after 23. So, I mean, technically he could be the starting quarterback in 24 and 25, right? Depending on how things go. So I do think that he sees it that way. I mean, I didn't talk to him. I don't know, but it's going to be hard to sit and take a back seat again, you know, this year behind Sam Hartman. But I do feel like, you know, if you sit him down and you talk to him, you're like, look how this can benefit you sitting behind a guy who is going to be a 60-year senior who has all these starts under his belt, all this success. And then you can see the success that this team can have and how you can just step right in and possibly take it to another level. That'd be really hard to turn my back on, because I still think that after this year, Tyler Buchner, is there going to be a quarterback competition going into 24? I don't feel like there will be. I feel like Tyler Buchner is going to be the quarterback.
You would think so, but that'll also depend on how quickly Kenny Minchey develops.
Absolutely.
Like, you don't expect that this year at all, but a year from now, you've got completely different competition going on, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And maybe it's going to be Buchner, Minchey, Carr.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe Carr enrolls early next spring. And you know,
yeah, I mean, you never know. Maybe he's that guy. I don't know. I just feel like with everything that's happened to Tyler Buchner in his lifetime as a football player, all the injuries that he's suffered, standing on the sidelines, I feel like he's pretty mentally tough. So I just don't see him cutting bait and leaving now.
Yeah, I mean, Father David says he thinks that Minchey will push to be a starter next year, and that's basically the exact same conversation we're probably having here from now. Is Buchner the clear-cut guy, or is Minchey going to push him for the job?
Sure.
And even though Minchey will most likely have less experience, you know, than Buchner has right now. Yeah.
I mean, it won't be much less, right? I mean, again, I think that's also why you have to get Tyler Buckner involved in the offense this year too, right? I think there does need to be a little bit of
Yeah.
a carrot out there. Hey, man, stick around. You're going to be a part of what we're doing, and then you are what we're doing moving forward. Like, I think there has to
Right.
be something there, not just, hey, you're a play away. Yeah, you can tell that to anybody that's a backup. Of course, you're a play away, but
Right.
you know,
Absolutely. So who's got the most to gain, do you think, this year? Coaches, players, everybody. Who's got the most to gain this spring?
man, that is such a good question because I don't know that we're going to have all of our answers to our questions for the coaching staff, in the spring, right? We're going to get an idea how they coach. Are they loud? Are they cussers? Are they, whatever, right? So some coaching style type stuff, but we're not going to really
I
know a whole
wouldn't
lot.
expect Joe Rudolph to be,
No,
Harry Heastan level
no,
with the
no.
language, right?
I don't see him yelling at a photographer,
Or even
on the
if he
sidelines.
barks and yells and stuff,
Yeah.
just the verbiage that comes out of his mouth, I would expect to be a little bit different, just based
Yes.
on kind of the things that he's talked about
Yes,
with
I
the faith
agree.
and stuff like that.
I agree. So I think the players have the biggest to gain as a whole, right? As a whole, and I think honestly, I think the wide receiving core has the best opportunity to gain some stature within the offense,
Mm-hmm.
getting some passes thrown to them by Sam Hartman, and him bringing them along and showing what they can do and all of that. I feel like that whole group has an opportunity to really kind of take that next step. Somebody said linebacker. Stymie says linebackers. You're not wrong. The problem is in practice, it's more obvious if the wide receivers are taking strides than if linebackers are taking strides because they never tackle. I mean,
Yeah.
what was our biggest gripe about some of the linebacking play? It's tackling, just flat out tackling. They don't
Mm-hmm.
tackle anymore in practice. So we can make some assumptions about what the linebackers are doing, but the proof's in the pudding with the wide receivers. Are they getting open? Are they catching passes?
Romlak wants to know if Harry's ever yelled at us. Never yelled at us, but your
But
boy Chris
wait,
was helping out during fall camp, and he got kind of barked at because he was videotaping something Harry apparently didn't want videotaped.
yes, which
Even
he was
though
allowed to
even though it
do.
was still open
Yes.
period for the cameras out there.
Yes, yes. He was videotaping some linemen doing some stuff, and he looks right over there. He's like, "Oh, why are we videotaping this?" And
Yeah.
all of a sudden, you see the camera just go down.
Yeah.
It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. And my buddy Chris is an offensive line coach at the high school level, and he's a pretty tough guy himself. And he was like, Harry got him. There's no doubt about it. Harry got him.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing, like if you're going to talk about the linebackers having something to gain, we're talking more about the young guys for sure. And I agree to an extent with what you're talking about with the tackling, but I think like for Collie and Sneed specifically, and this probably can apply to most of the young guys, is just knowing their assignments and being where they're
Sure.
supposed to be once the ball is snapped. That kind of thing.
Sure.
That was in the short amount of time that we got to see him, that was an issue last year.
Mhm.
Like just look at the Gator Bowl with Marcus Freeman, like so they've definitely got something to gain. I just think for them, they are, like when we've talked in the past about how for Buckner to end up being the starter over Hartman, he's going to have to clearly be the guy. And as talented as these young linebackers are, just the way Al Golden has, in a very Brian Kelly way, I know, prioritized experience and all that kind of stuff. I just think that these guys are going to have to flat out whoop the veterans in front of them to win a job.
I think the most telling thing,
and you can like that, you can not like that, but that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I think the most telling thing about the linebackers, to be honest with you, if we're just talking about spring, right? The most telling thing for me is how many reps they're getting in team, right? Because if they're not getting a bunch of reps during team, then they're not doing what they need to do everywhere else in order for them to get on the field.
Yeah.
They what kind of reps are they going to get?
I concur. All right, we've got some I've got some comments kind of stacked up that we'll get
There's a lot
to
of good
in
stuff in
rapid
there.
fire. There is. There's a lot of good stuff in there. We've got a couple women's basketball
I know.
questions that we'll throw in there. We've got some gladiator stuff, which is going to come up here pretty quickly. But spring practice, it's just 2 days away. I'm ready for it to finally
Yeah,
get started. Even though we're not going to get to see a ton, I am excited about the fact that there are going to be a lot of media opportunities and the chance to talk to
that's
all these
true.
coaches and players and stuff like that. Are you going to be out there next Saturday, by the way?
I will be there every Saturday. Yes.
Okay. Well, I'll be gone, so
Oh,
you
that's
might need to
right.
take a recorder and send me some
Oh, is that what
stuff.
you think is going to
So,
happen? Okay.
yeah, I know. I know. I might actually have to make you work.
Gosh, jeez.
Seriously.
I do have a girls lacrosse situation that I have to be at on Saturday as well, but I think I might be able to help you out.
Oh, now we've got other excuses that we can make. So
It's all part of the job, man.
we'll see. So are you ready for rapid fire?
Baby, I'm always ready for rapid fire. I even
All right.
busted out the IB hoodie today. After I got home, I was a little confined in the dress clothes, so I'm like, rapid fire, let's go. Let's ice
Let's
out
go.
today.
Time to do it. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Notre Dame will wear green jerseys for the Ohio State game this season.
It's about time that they picked a game with significance for the green
Yes.
jerseys. That's what I say to that. I think it's number one. I think it's pretty ballsy because of all the crap that they get for the green jerseys. Because people still are under the impression that the green jerseys are bad luck, by the way. And they haven't lost in the green jerseys in quite a while, but they always play
True.
crap teams. So the last time I think a significant game was played in the green jerseys was when they had to throw back to the 1977 jerseys against USC and got smoke showed in our boys' one and only start at quarterback.
That's right.
And it was bad. It was really bad. But I think that's the last time they played a significant team in the green jerseys. So
I think you're right.
touche to Marcus Freeman for, I'm assuming it was him, touche to him for pulling them out for a huge game. Huge. I mean, it's the biggest home game of the year. I love it.
And I like the way, and I've said before, this is the way you do it. Like you're not
Yes.
announcing it the week before the game.
Yes.
You're not announcing it, you're not running out of the tunnel and now you've got green jerseys on after you warmed up in blue. You're announcing it months in advance. Yep. Everyone knows you're going to do it. This is going to be a special game. It's going to be prime time. And I'm sure that has something to do with it as well, because there'll be a lot of recruits there.
Yep.
There'll be more recruits and more people watching on TV. But you're doing it in advance. You're not making it like it's like, ooh, this extra special thing. You're right. You're doing it for a significant opponent, and you're letting everybody know in advance, this is what's going to happen. You wear green, we're going to wear green, the whole thing. I think it's awesome.
And I will also say they've done it so far in advance that I'm hoping that the green uniforms are going to get a little bit of a little spruce up, a little redesign, if you will. So I'm hoping, because
let's hope so.
Did you see on Twitter the Notre Dame football? I believe it was the football team Twitter. They put out 3 different types of green jerseys, and you could put your name and your number.
Oh, right. I did see that.
So that leads me to believe that maybe they're going to switch it up, because they had green jerseys with white numbers, green jerseys with gold numbers, and then the green jerseys with the blue. So does that mean we're looking at maybe a little bit of a switch up here? I'm hoping.
I hope so. I'm not a fan of the green with the blue numbers.
I know. Myself. Me neither. I mean, it's okay. I'd rather have gold, though, or white. Gold or
Absolutely.
White. Either one would be better than the blue.
White would look really crisp on the
It really
jerseys,
would. Actually. And I hate to say this because I know it's sacrilege, but I would love the green jerseys with the white numbers and white pants.
That would actually look pretty cool as well.
Just saying.
Yeah.
That would be crisp.
It's hard to disagree with.
Yeah.
Okay. So I saw, as I mentioned earlier, your tweet about the movie Gladiator, which of course starred Russell Crowe as one-time Roman general turned gladiator Maximus. So my question is, who on the current Notre Dame football team would be their Maximus?
See, this is tough, because if this was last year, it would be Michael Mayer and it wouldn't be close, Because I could see him in the middle of
Sure.
Notre Dame Stadium being like, "Are you not entertained?" Like, that's totally him. That is him 100%.
Right.
With this year's squad, I'm just not sure. Like, I'm trying to think of like the big personality and who that would be, because you need some personality to be yelling at the fans, and to take control. The scene that I put out on Twitter was the end of the scene where they're supposed to lose and he gets everybody behind him and he becomes the general again, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And so who is the guy? Like, you'd love to say Sam Hartman because the quarterback is the general and you want everybody to follow him. I don't know Sam Hartman's personality well enough to say that he's Maximus. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Pretty laid back when we got to talk to
Right.
him a couple weeks ago.
Right.
Seemed pretty laid back. Like Romlek is saying Botello. And like from a personality standpoint, I could see that. But part of Maximus is the leadership as well. And that's what, like, to me, the one that stands out, maybe not, like that, that very sharp personality, but when you throw in the leadership and just the position he plays, my guy, I think, would be JD Bertrand.
Okay.
That's who I would go with. Like,
I could see that.
Renowned for his leadership. And again, I think he's got personality, not to the Michael Mayer extent, I don't think. But I think guys would follow him into the Coliseum, like choose your sword, your whatever, your fishnet or whatever it happens to be. So I would go with Bertrand.
Okay. This is a good one right here. Tommy Gunn says, personality-wise, I could see it being Jaden Mickey.
Yeah.
We all know that he's a talker, or at least the most obvious talker on the team. So I could definitely see that.
But Maximus was a general, so again, it's like
I agree.
Was a big thing,
right? Right. No, you're absolutely right. And I like the Audric Estime. Like, I like that one from a, just a physicality, just take your will away. Like, I love that idea. I'm going to need to see somebody just step up as a big time leader. JD uses the crown of his helmet. That's pretty funny, actually. And remember, they did kill somebody. He took off his helmet and just bashed him in the face. So,
husband to a murdered wife, father to a murdered son. I shall have my vengeance in this life or the next.
Oh, that's well done. This is well done.
If you find yourself riding through a field, do not be alarmed. You are in Elysium. You are already dead. Good stuff.
Oh, I love it.
Did Tommy just plowing through Gladiator quotes there a little bit ago?
Did you know that they're coming out with a Gladiator 2?
I saw that. I think I saw that in your tweet, and it's like, is Russell going to be in it, or is it going to be somebody else? Do we know?
They're from what I was able to find out, because it's been kind of tight-lipped. When I was able to find out, it sounds like they're going to kind of continue the storyline, but with, I think, the little boy that was
like now he's grown up or something. The kid,
the kid, the
from that scene that went out there.
Yes, but how can you have Gladiator 2 without Russell Crowe? Like, I realize he died at the end, but let's revisionist history, people. Bring him back.
It's like you're going on 25 years at this point now, aren't you?
It's true.
Since a kid, so it's not like you could do a prequel. It all have to be CGI types.
This is true.
You did that.
I mean, even 25 years later, Russell Crowe is still a bad A, and I think he could still do his thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I mean, he could be like the retired guy who was in charge of all the gladiators. He got his freedom. Like, he could play that kind of a role or something. Right. But he's gonna need to kick some ass in one of the scenes. But
Father David, I agree. Some sequels should never be made.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough.
Stymie. By the way, History of the World Part 2. Jesse and I were talking about this a couple of weeks ago, and Stymie's asking if History of the World Part 2 is worth watching. They did a series on Hulu. There've been some. I think I've watched maybe the first 3 episodes so far, and there's been some pretty good stuff. There's hits and misses. There's hits and misses, but they did a little spoof of Curb Your Enthusiasm on there. It was called Curb Your Judaism, but it's got the guy who plays Leon from, I don't know, do you watch Curb Your Enthusiasm ever? The guy who plays Leon on there is is in this, little thing. So
Nice.
there's a lot of good comics in this show, and of course, Mel Brooks, wrote it and
I
created it
mean,
and all that
he's
stuff. So
hilarious.
I would recommend it. But here's another thing that happened today. Besides slicing a chunk out of my finger, 3 weeks ago, I got my bank card was hacked, and so
Oh,
I got like the security call. We shut it down, ordered a new card. It's been 3 weeks, and I still haven't got the new card. And I
yikes.
called them last week and I said, "Hey, we're going on 3 weeks. I haven't got the new card." And they said, "Well, it was mailed on the 28th." Well, I haven't got it, so I'm still
Yeah.
waiting on a card. And so in the meantime, when they shut your card down, anything that you've got it connected to pay your bills.
Oh, brutal.
So I've got Hulu and my internet. Like my internet could be lost. It happens enough anyway in the middle of this show because I got emails today saying, "Hey, your card number's no good anymore." So I don't know.
As you're sitting waiting,
Yeah,
I gotta
3
promise
weeks.
I'm good for it.
3 weeks later. Yeah, exactly.
Jeez.
Let me ask you this: do you buy or sell Gladiator as a sports movie?
That's a buy. It's a huge buy. 100% buy. Because that was the sport of the time.
It's like the original sport.
Yes. Like the Coliseum was the original stadium.
That's
Like
right.
that, absolutely 100%, no question about it, sports movie. Yes, sir.
I was wondering if I was going to have to argue with you on
Yeah,
this.
I couldn't.
Because, like,
I couldn't.
because, like, to me, I was thinking about it. Like, it's got everything that most of your sports movies have. It's got like the off, off-field strife. You've got a love story and all the the drama going on. Just like Hoosiers, for example, with Coach Dale and the teacher, and the stuff. All that stuff going on, and like
Right?
there's actually more actual sport in Gladiator than there is in the movie Rudy. And
That's very true.
like Rudy is 99% just the drama. There's very
Right.
little that they actually see taking place on the field.
It's a lot of slow-mo practicing,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. But you're absolutely right. I mean, if Rudy's a sports movie, then The Gladiator is 100% a sports movie.
Yes.
And there's a ton that goes on because, you could look at it as like a guy who starts out in the minors and works his way up to the major leagues.
Right.
Like, that's the Gladiator.
That's true, because he kind of started off in the small gladiator pits, didn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And they worked their way up to the,
Yeah.
to the Coliseum, which was the big time, the big show, if you will. And, that's when he gained all of his fame.
Yep. All right. We've got some questions, comments from women's basketball, and I will post the comments and then we'll do the question. Anthony, I know the girls won yesterday, but that was horrendous shooting on their home floor. I hope they got their bad shooting game out of them with the win. And then where was the other one? ND Sailor. Why were the ND women so poor shooting yesterday? They won with defense and rebounding. So with that, Vince, I'll just throw this to you. Fill in the blank. The Notre Dame women's basketball win over Mississippi State was blank.
It's exciting. I mean, I watched it start to finish. Some of my family was there. My daughter and my son were at the game with the in-laws, cheering, getting all excited. My daughter caught some March Madness socks. She's all excited about that. And but no, it was an exciting game. And you're right. The shooting was bad, but it was bad on both sides. And they needed to, it's just like anybody. When you can't shoot, you've got to do the other stuff. You got to be able to defend and you've got to be able to rebound. And Notre Dame set records for rebounding. I mean, they definitely rebounded the basketball.
Lauren Ebo, Maddie Westbeld, bringing it.
Yeah. They both had, 15, 16 plus rebounds? I mean, it was an impressive display of defense and rebounding. And that's what they needed to get themselves out of the field of 34 and into the Sweet 16.
What's funny is like everyone afterwards, I saw all the comments. Well, it wasn't pretty, but they won, or it was ugly, but they won. I didn't see it sitting there calling the game. I never saw it as an ugly game. I saw it as a very greatly competitive game, a very physical game. You can call it ugly if you want because of the lack of shooting, but I'll say this. I think something that we learned about Notre Dame yesterday was if you want to get into a boxing match with Lauren Ebo, you're going to lose. Yeah. And more importantly, if you want to get into a boxing match with Sonia Citron, you're going to lose because Sonia, she might have that, facade where she doesn't change her expression very much, but she took him to town when it was time to take him to town. She was 2 for 12 from the field. But what did she do? She found a way to get to the free throw line at the end of the game when the game was on the line. Here's my biggest, other than what I just said, my biggest takeaway is Sam Purcell, the Mississippi State head coach. And I don't know how much they talked about this on the TV broadcast. He was an assistant coach at Louisville for 9 years. And what happened 2+ weeks ago at the ACC tournament? Louisville cranked up its defense. They bodied up Notre Dame. They threw them off their game. They played them physical. Notre Dame was not able to respond. Well, do you think that Sam Purcell, 9 years on the Louisville staff, do you think he got the scouting report handed straight to him by Jeff Walz, the Louisville head coach? Of course he did. And so what did Mississippi State do? They tried to come out. They tried to body up on Notre Dame. They tried to be as physical with them as possible. And there was a lot of success in that. But who kept plugging away? Notre Dame kept plugging away. They didn't get beaten like they did against Louisville with the same game plan a couple of weeks ago. They battled through it and they found ways to win, despite the fact that, like I said, if you want to say it wasn't the prettiest thing, but their players made plays. And again, Lauren Ebo, 18 rebounds, the most in program history in an NCAA tournament game. Maddie Westbeld with 15 boards of her own. And then again, Citron, did she have a great shooting game? No, but they were just all over her physically the whole game. And again, when it was crunch time, she found ways to make plays and she hit the free throws, and they ended up walking out of there with a win against the same game plan that beat them a couple weeks earlier.
It was you actually said on the broadcast at one point that I think you said it reminded you of Louisville, or it wasn't quite as physical as Louisville, but it reminded you of that or something along those lines. I was like, yeah, that's a really good call, because it was like that. And it just felt like a heavyweight, just kind of a boxing match. It's like, okay, whoever's left standing is going to end up winning this thing. And it ended up being Notre Dame. It was just a really good game to watch. And, to Mississippi State's credit, they didn't play like an 11 seed.
No.
They didn't. They did not play like an 11. And
they beat the 6 seed Creighton handily
the
game before that. They had some confidence going into that game.
Yep, absolutely.
No doubt. Now they do. It's on to the Sweet 16, and they play Maryland, and that'll be a rematch. Decaf 18 says, that's just great. Hey, I like their chances, man. I like their chances, especially after coming through yesterday the way they came through. It should be a great game, and it'll be the second year in a row Notre Dame gets to the Sweet 16, and they'll have a rematch from the season. They played NC State in the Sweet 16 last year. They won in the regular season last year. They lost by a couple points in the Sweet 16. Maybe they flip the script on Maryland. I think it's going to be a great game. I think it's going to be a great game.
Yeah, I'm going to be watching.
Yep. All right, so T-Guns was asking if Sonia was the midseason enrollee freshman. No, that was Cass Prosper, and Prosper played some good defense out there.
Yeah, she really did.
Something else that impressed me, and I mentioned this in the post game. Cass Prosper and KK Bransford both picked up their second foul in the first quarter. They sat for the remainder of the first quarter, but then they came back, played most of the rest of the game, and didn't pick up another foul afterwards. And and we're still playing really good defense in a game that was called the way it was as well.
And they ran the floor really well too.
Yeah, Citron played all 40 minutes, I believe, yesterday as well.
There she needs to.
Yeah. Fill in the blank. It's blank that it is being reported that Mike Bray has interviewed at South Florida and is sounding like could be their top candidate for the men's basketball job there.
It sounds to me, let's see, it's blank. It sounds like a retirement gig. That's the blank. That's what it sounds like to me. He is going to go down there. He's never going to leave the state of Florida. And he's going to recruit the state of Florida. He's not going to go very far. And he's just going to, because it's okay to lose to South Florida. It's no big deal. He's just going to kick back, right out into the sunset while still getting paid. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah,
so.
And I think that's a very fair assessment. His son and his grandkids, they live down there in Bradenton, which is just south of Tampa. It's like that's where the Pirates have their
Nice.
spring training. And it just seems like for him to be taking a job this quickly,
Yeah.
it like when you look at Mike Bray, stepped down, retired, whatever you want to call it here at Notre Dame, it doesn't make it seem like that was probably the case
Yeah.
to be jumping back in right away. He did some TV over the weekend, and when you look at the state this program is in right now, and it's like, okay, now you're going to go to Florida. And so what?
Yeah.
Recruiting's going to be that much easier at USF. I realize it's Tampa and all that, but he's also going to be going into a situation where, like, at least going in, this is a program that has not been, I believe, to the NCAA tournament in 10 or 11 years, South Florida. And the women's program is pretty good right now. They've
Hmm.
actually
Sound
they,
familiar?
so it's like, yeah, so it's like you're going to go into a situation where you're
Oh.
already second fiddle once
Yeah.
again to the
Yeah.
women's team. They've got a pretty good women's team down there.
Oh man.
And
I
it just he he, he was not wholeheartedly into the recruiting here at Notre Dame these last few
oh,
years. That became
not
very
even
obvious.
close.
And so now you're going to go to where the sun is shining and you've got all these other things going on.
Yeah.
And now you're going to be a better recruiter at South Florida.
Not a
I have a hard
chance.
time with that.
Not a chance. And I mean, it's funny because what was it? It was over the weekend where we're driving to Michigan City for the semi-state game, and I'm talking with my in-laws, and they're like, "Oh yeah, by the way, Mike Bray's house is for sale." It's like, what? I mean, he's out of here no matter what. And my guess is he was going to go to Florida regardless. And like I said, I think he's going to take this job so he could still get paid to be down in Florida. Like I just
Right.
it has become painfully obvious it was not his decision to leave Notre Dame, and it was still the right decision by Notre Dame because you're right, his recruiting has been lacking significantly over the last few years. I mean, it just has. I mean, if you look at the entire recruiting class was all South Bend guys, last year, and you got a South Bend guy this year. And I'm not saying those guys weren't good, but you're telling me they're the best that you could have gotten from the entire country? I have a hard time with that. You know what I mean? I have a hard time with that.
Chi-Town's asking if Bray is going to be involved in choosing his successor because it feels like a conflict of interest. I don't think he was ever going to be involved.
Yeah,
He said
exactly.
those things, but especially, just like he's pretty much been gone, it sounds like,
Right.
ever since. I don't think that was ever a thing. I think he kind of said that it may, maybe he volunteered that or whatever,
I
but
think it made him feel
I don't
better.
think so.
I think that
Yeah.
he said that to make himself feel better.
Right.
Because he
Right.
thinks he's Roy Williams, or name your elite basketball coach that when they retire, or Duke, Krzyzewski at Duke, right? He was able to kind of handpick his successor. That wasn't going to happen here, and I think he wanted to kind of make it sound like it was to a degree.
Yeah. Will Carmody follow Bray since he has eligibility?
Maybe.
I know
I don't
Bray
know.
likes
Maybe.
him, and there's a lot to respect about Robbie Carmody, but my gosh, the guy's just never stayed healthy. I mean, he
Right.
could. I know he's in the portal, but
Sure.
I don't know.
Somebody will take Robbie Carmody. He's a good leader. He's a good kid. Somebody's going to take a chance on him. Maybe it's South Florida.
Yeah.
But I guess the question for me would be, does Robbie Carmody want to go play for Mike Bray again? That would be my question. I don't know the answer to that.
Decaf says he checked out months ago. I mean, you can make the argument that it was years ago, but like
I mean,
the only thing I'd say in his defense is he thought he was going to have J.J. Starling and Blake Wesley together this year. I
Sure.
think that he thought that Blake was going to make it for at least 2 years.
I'm sure he did think that.
And, things look a lot different this year if you do still have Blake Wesley on this team.
Sure.
Now, you still are lacking in the post, which was the biggest fault of this team. They still needed more there. But for the last 5 years, they have, with the exception of Blake Wesley and a little bit with J.J. Starling, there's been no athleticism out there
Sure.
on the floor, especially when you compare it to ACC teams, like good winning ACC teams.
The fact that he thought that Blake Wesley was going to be there for more than a year shows you how lazy he is in his recruiting because he didn't do his homework. Meaning Mike Bray didn't do his homework on who this kid was and what he was going to be when he got to Notre Dame with the off the court stuff.
Right.
There was no way he was going to make it multiple years at Notre Dame in the classroom. There's just no way.
Yes.
And he'll be the first one to tell you that. It just wasn't going to happen. And it didn't happen in high school. What made him think that it was going to change when he got to college? Like that, you got to do your homework, man. And he didn't. And that's lazy recruiting. You didn't do your homework.
It bit him. Yeah, Michael says if Blake went to class, he would have.
Right.
And I don't think there are any lies there.
No.
Fill in the blank. First week in the NCAA tournament was blank.
It was exciting. I mean, it was bracket busting, right? I mean, I think we can all agree on that. It was bracket busting. It was fun. I mean, it was exciting. I didn't really have a dog in the fight as far as like a team I was following. And so I wasn't like heartbroken or sitting on the edge of my seat, but I watched that entire Purdue game, that they lost. And I was on the edge of my seat watching it like, oh my gosh, they are going to lose this game. Like there were so many of those kinds of games over the first 4 days. It was unbelievable.
11 different conferences represented in the Sweet 16.
Crazy.
And I think I'll save that for a second, but like look at who's there. Florida Atlantic. UConn is back in the Sweet 16. San Diego State, Princeton, Xavier is there. Now, like some of those teams are higher seeded teams. Like that Tobin Anderson man from Fairleigh Dickinson, that he was he was quite a character. I don't know how many of his interviews you saw. That guy's like a fast and like what's crazy about them is the fact that they didn't even win their conference tournament. Like the fact that Merrimack is transitioning and Merrimack transitioning to Division I, they won the conference tournament. Fairleigh Dickinson got the big prize even though they lost their conference championship game, and then they went out and beat Purdue. And I love the fact that like that interview or the locker room speech about the more I watch Purdue, the more I think we can beat them. And like Matt Painter was pissed off about that. It's like, maybe you should take that to heart. Like speaking of guys who need to change their recruiting tact a little bit, and speaking of zero athleticism, like how did Purdue win the Big Ten and end up with the number 1 seed and look like that? They have no guards. Like their guards, like you could go to a high school down the street and find more athleticism than the guards Purdue has.
And they couldn't hit a shot. I mean,
no.
And when you've got a guy like Zach Eby or whatever down low, you've got to be able to hit outside because every time he got the ball, he pretty much got triple and quadruple teamed. And they were just daring Purdue to hit outside. And they couldn't hit water in the ocean. I mean, it was embarrassing is what it was. And Zach Eby was the only weapon that they had. And, kudos to FDU for the way that, I mean, they just said, hey, we're not going to let this guy beat us. Anybody else go for it. And they couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So
did you see that FDU didn't have a band? And so the Dayton band came to Columbus and learned their fight song. And they were like, they were basically acting as Fairleigh Dickinson's band yesterday or the day before, whenever that was.
Well, and one of the women's teams in South Bend didn't have a band, and so one of the local high schools went and was their band. I think I saw on Twitter. Yeah. So kudos to those guys for stepping up.
Here's one thing I noticed: just the way things were televised, and I saw that they set the first 2 days of the tournament set viewership records, like all-time viewership records for Thursday and Friday. The Thursday, Saturday, both the matchups and the announcer crews were much better than the Friday, Sunday announcers and actual matchups. I don't know if you noticed that, but
I did not.
It stood out to me. Like the games weren't quite as sexy, and the announcing crews were like they were all like the lower, because like you had I think Ian Eagle was the only what I would call top, play-by-play guy working the Friday Sunday games. But
Okay.
because you had like Nance, you had Harlan, all those guys working the first day of the tournament, and the matchups are just a lot better. But Purdue lost to double-digit seeds 3 straight times now.
Crazy.
Virginia has lost to double-digit seeds 3 of the last 4 years, and Arizona has lost to double-digit seeds 4 of the last 5 years. Just amazing.
Yeah.
But
Unbelievable.
that's why this tournament is so great,
Yeah.
And you've got no blue bloods, none of the traditional blue bloods, Kentucky, Kansas, Duke, North Carolina, none of those 4 in the Sweet 16 for just the 3rd time ever, I guess.
That's nuts. That's nuts.
And yes, Stymie trying to rub a little salt in the wound, as it were. How did Kansas do this weekend? And then, like the whole Eric Musselman with the shirt off, I could do without. But it was frustrating, obviously. It was frustrating watching them give up that lead. They gave up an 11-point lead, and then, actually I'm sitting there doing the Notre Dame women's game yesterday, and I'm like, man, KU gave up the 11-point lead. Is that same thing going to happen here 2 days in a row? Fortunately, the women pulled it out. But my wife, we were watching because we're both, alums, and my wife was like, I hope all the good teams lose the rest of the weekend after Kansas lost. So, and of course, Kansas State, the rival, is in the Sweet 16. So, how many Sweet 16 teams do you have left?
9. Wow. I have 9, which
is a lot
better than I thought.
This might be the worst bracket I've ever done. I think I've got 4. I've got UCLA, Alabama, Houston, and Texas. Those are the only 4 of the Sweet 16 that I picked. So there's a lot of red on my bracket as I'm looking at it right now. So, that's kind of embarrassing. But I have 9 Sweet 16, I have 5 Elite 8, and I have 3 Final 4 still alive. So, I've got an opportunity to not come in last is basically all it is for like the group that I'm in. We had one at school with our little department. There's 6 of us. If the last place person has to buy lunch for everybody. So the goal is just not to come in last. And I'm feeling fairly confident about my spot right now. I'm like right in the middle, 3rd place. I'll stay right there, baby. All I know is if you end up being the one that's got to buy lunch, a lot of people are going to go hungry. So
it's Little Caesars for everybody.
That's right. That's true. You can buy a lot of pizza at Little Caesars. $15 you can feed a lot of people.
Oh, the guy who's in the lead, he's like, we're getting Ruth's Chris, right? I'm like, yeah, says the guy who's winning.
Yeah. I'll buy 1 steak and you guys can all split it.
I sent you my bracket before everything started, though. So
I know.
my bracket's legit. It's just not good.
Yeah. Well, it's the same with mine. Joey, do you like movies about gladiators? You ever been in a Turkish prison? Have you seen the movie Airplane, Vince?
A long time ago, but yes.
All right, well, that's going to do it for tonight. Don't forget Tariq Bracy. If you've got a few more people here watching live right now than at the start of the show, Tariq Bracy, former Irish cornerback, is going to join us at 6:00 on tomorrow's show. So be here for the live show tomorrow. Fill up the chat with questions for him. We will, choose the appropriate ones. Like I said, keep it clean, but you can ask some questions of Tariq tomorrow on the show. So looking forward to that. That's right. And then Wednesday, of course, got Marcus Freeman press conference and the start of spring football, and we'll have some Marcus Freeman comments on Wednesday's show as well. All right? Sound good?
Boom.
Ever seen a grown man naked? It's from Decaf 18, just to clarify. All right, we will talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.